growing up in the 90s was probably the greatest thing to me personally. I experienced a lot of growth in what would eventually become the standard. Internet used to be run by the government, but now it was completely privatized, and television shows were pretty much geared towards the young generation that I was in. As far as media consumption goes, we didn't really have a lot of choices other than your standard Cartoon Networks and Nickelodeons, but I think that's all we really needed as kids growing up. The world was pretty much united except for a lot of the incidents that happened around the world, but for the most part I think everything was pretty peaceful. One year in particular was 1994 when Dirty Pair Flash first hit Japanese televisions in January of that year and premiered each month afterwards, all the way until about June, and it was great. Before there was Symphogear, there was Dirty Pair Flash, which follows the adventures of Kei and Yuri, who are trouble consultants of the 3WA, and not to harp on too much of what they actually do, they're pretty much like detectives or undercover police officers. So to give you a little bit of a backstory, Dirty Pair Flash is essentially a prequel to Dirty Pair that premiered in the 80s, but this one has a different art style and delves a little bit more into how the characters are based on the light novels. But you're probably wondering why I'm even bringing up a show from 1994 and why it's even relevant. Well, with the release of things like Sonic Mania, it got me back in the mindset of the 90s, and boy were they good. And I even scoured a lot of YouTube videos and search results for Dirty Pair Flash and found that I couldn't find any reviews anywhere. I'm sure they're probably nestled somewhere deep in the search results, but I wanted to be able to at least have my hand at defending it, especially since there's a couple of articles that are out there that I'll link in the description, and they pretty much wouldn't recommend it or said that it's not really to their taste, especially with how rapid anime comes out at this point. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and just blindly enjoy it, but if it's something that it might be up your alley, then definitely check it out. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and jump into the year 1994. The year 1994 was a great year for a lot of different reasons, and some of my favorite reasons are a lot of the video games and movies that came out. Things like the Street Fighter movie, which I guess now is just kind of terrible, the Flintstones movie, Jungle Book, and even The Mask, and famous movies like Pulp Fiction were a part of it. And as far as anime movies go, Sailor Moon S premiered in December of 1994. As far as some of the games go, Donkey Kong Country came out for the Super Nintendo, Earthworm Jim came out, which was a great platformer at the time, even games like Earthbound, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3 came out along with Sonic and Knuckles, which further expanded the game in a great way. I used to own almost every Sonic game as a kid. Even at the end of 1994, I actually won a contest a long time ago for Sega Channel, which was pretty much my first exposure to being able to play virtually any game, given that it came out in that month, directly through my cable and right to my Sega Genesis. And as a kid, that was probably the greatest thing. I think I won it for an entire year. If you happen to go on the Web Archive website, you can actually go to Sega's old website for Sega Channel, and you can even see the games that were out during that month. So I think it was pretty safe to say that 1994 was a pretty awesome year, especially if you were a Sonic the Hedgehog fan like I was. And unbeknownst to me, a show came out in Japan called Dirty Pair Flash. It wouldn't reach me until about the early 2000s, and then at that point, as soon as I saw it, I was extremely hooked onto it. Almost everything about that show captured what I would consider the true nature of the 90s, especially when it came out, and at the time I knew nothing better other than just your classic Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon series. And then of course you had some Toonami in pretty much the middle of the afternoon. I was never home quick enough to actually watch any of that stuff, but it was nice when I did get to see it. As for the setting and some of the characters that are in this series, Kei and Yuri are trouble consultants for the 3WA, and they pretty much have what I would call misadventures, but that only really occurs in the second and third season. But as far as this first season that premiered each month in Japan, it was essentially following the one storyline where they had to stop a man named Waldes, and he was pretty much having his plan to control the galaxy, which at the time in the 90s was really scary. If any of you are familiar with the series Tenchi Muyo, it's kind of reminiscent of that a little bit. I mean, as far as the art style and the characters and things like that, but of course we were talking about animation in 1994, which in and of itself wasn't terrible, but just a little bit limited. But I think that added to a lot of the story elements that we had back in 1994. Undoubtedly, the first episode of this series is actually one of my favorites because it had a lot of action in it, a lot of running, which I guess was a part of it a little bit, and of course some of the colors and just the entire aesthetic of this entire world that they lived in, which they didn't really give any backup for other than it just exists. The world that's built here isn't exactly that, other than we know it takes place in the future, but we don't know anything about how this technology comes to be or any events that led up to it other than they mention a war one time. I would still like to know a little bit of the backstory about the moon because it's completely shattered. But that'll be a different lead-in for a different day because it may somehow be tied to Symphogear. Just maybe. But here's a little bit of a synopsis for this first episode, where Kei and Yuri have to deliver this card to the 3WA, to which they don't know anything about, and they try to get it there in the quickest way possible, but they keep running into the GCN people and they keep running into a whole bunch of other people like the military, the police, things like that. And it just makes it really difficult, but adds to a lot of the humor that this show has to offer. The reputation that this show had back in the days was that it had girls in it that had collateral damage. They would just destroy everything, entire blocks, entire buildings, just over the top kind of action. I won't spoil the rest of the episode for you because I'd really like you guys to check it out and at least hate watch it if you want, because it may be okay to you guys. And my own honest opinion from me to you guys is that you should probably just stick to the first season. The second and third season, they're okay. I mean, the third season is pretty it's pretty there. But the second season, I think, still upholds a lot of what Dirty Pair Flash is about, being trouble consultants and doing things of that nature. Whereas in season 3, it just kind of drifts off into some weird place. I don't really know how to explain it to you guys. But ultimately, Dirty Pair Flash was something that was really close to my heart, and it still kind of is in its own way. Sometimes I find myself wanting to go back and watch it all again because the experience, like just the entire thrill of this first season was phenomenal. If anything, this actually inspired me to want to make my own story. I want to make my own buddy cop comedy thing that's just about these two dudes or these two chicks that just blow stuff up and are just a hoot to be around. Just fucking hilarious to be around. But hopefully you guys will check it out, or if you don't, that's fine too. These are just a couple of my thoughts and wanted to get it down and put it on the universe, just in a little bit of the defense of this series because I do enjoy it. But I guess I'll go ahead and just wrap it up here. And if you guys did enjoy it, feel free to give me a thumbs up, and if you didn't, a thumbs down. I mean, every little bit of feedback helps, especially if you subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'll definitely be able to start posting more things here in the near future. Just gotta get some time in. But I'm really excited about season 3, which I hope that you guys will tune in for, because I'm planning a lot of great stuff for that. And this music that you're hearing right now is actually brought to you by Garrett Williamson, who you can check out the links in the description below. Of course, you can check out his Twitter and things like that. And also, if you want to support me and my efforts, feel free to head over to Patreon, and there you can donate a couple of dollars for it. I'm in the process of making a couple of adjustments to my Patreon, but I think I'm right where I want to be with it. But you don't have to donate a lot. Maybe even $1 will help, and then that way I can keep paying the artists that make all of this great stuff for me, and then also help support me in just a small way. It's mainly more for them than it is for me. Well, hopefully you'll have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you guys again soon. And don't forget that I am on Twitter and also on Steam, but you can find those links in the description as well. I'm not gonna try to harp on it too much nowadays. I think you guys are pretty well acquainted enough to know that. But I'll hopefully see you guys in the next couple of videos that I'm making, which should be out sometime soon. I try to keep something coming out each week, so that way I got just something to do. But you guys take care, and I'll see you later.